Today is day 136 in 1 Samuel 18. And David was such an amazing warrior, a man of integrity. So he had favor with the people, the Israelites. He had favor with the king, and he definitely had favor with God. But unfortunately, in a kingdom, when one of your, should I say, underlings that you're already jealous about has more favor with the people, it can cause havoc. The kings do not like to be overshadowed, and that's what happened here. So let's get ready and read. It says, whatever Saul asked David to do, David did it successfully. So Saul made him a commander over the men of war and appointed that was welcomed by the people and Saul's officers alike. So everybody loved David because everything he did, he was successful at. But what happened was he became so successful with the people that one day King Saul was out in the town and he heard the women singing, Saul kills the 1,000 and David kills the 10,000. Well, that went over like a lead balloon. Kings do not like that. So here's what happened. It says, Saul was then afraid of David, for the Lord was with David and had turned away from Saul. Finally, Saul sent him away and appointed him commander over 1,000 men, and David faithfully led his troops into battle. David continued to succeed in everything he did, for the Lord was with him. When Saul recognized this, he became even more afraid of him. But all of Israel and Judah loved David because he was so successful at leading his troops into battle. So Saul said, I will give you one of my daughters to marry. And he betrayed David and promised one daughter and changed his mind and took her away and betrothed her to someone else. And then his other daughter, Michal, fell madly in love with David. So Saul was going to let David marry his daughter Michal. And remember, when he killed Goliath, Saul promised that they would marry one of his daughters and his whole family would never pay taxes again. So what happened is Saul put a stipulation on it. If you go out and get 1,000 foreskins from the Israelite armies, if they fall and you can bring back 100 foreskins, then you can marry Michal. What does he do? He goes out and gets 200 and said he went into battle with great fury and was very successful once again. So it says, tell David that all I want for the brides is 100. Then he brought back the 200. When Saul realized that the Lord was with David and how much his daughter Michal loved him, Saul became even more afraid of him, and he remained David's enemy for the rest of his life. Every time the commanders of the Philistines attacked, David was more successful against them than all the rest of Saul's officers. So David's name became very famous. Well, Saul was not happy about that, so he was going to murder David. That was the plan. But the problem with Saul is that Jonathan and David truly loved each other. They were best friends, and I believe that God anointed and appointed Jonathan to be David's protector, because he ran to David and said, you've got to escape. My father's going to murder you. So he took off and went into the hills. And from then on, and I want to say something, it talks about in here how, the evil spirits would come over and take Saul over. The evil spirits would enter him. And it says evil spirits from the Lord. Now, there's nothing evil in God. He never puts anything evil on somebody, but what he does do is he lifts his protection. So he lifted his protection off of Saul, and he allowed the evil spirits to infiltrate into Saul's life. So people misread that when it says, God had evil spirits come upon Saul. There is nothing evil in God. He is 100% holy, pure, true. But when we disobey the Lord, what happens is that protective covering of God is lifted off of people, which allows the evil spirits to come upon them. So that's what happened with Saul, to the point where when David came back to duty after his battles and was playing the harp for Saul to comfort his spirit, he was so angry that he got up and threw a spear at him and tried to kill him, but David got away. So even if people who have evil spirits try to come against us, God is going to sovereignly protect us. And I'm going to read you what it says about this. Even David's own wife, Michal, said, "Run, you've got to hide. My father's coming for you," the second time. And she even made a decoy. And Saul said to his daughter, "Why have you deceived me?" And she said, "Because he threatened to kill me." But really it was because she loved David and she didn't want anything to happen. So when that happened, Saul went out to find him. But you know what happened? God overtook Saul's officers and overtook Saul. And at that moment, they started prophesying before the Lord. In other words, God returned and put his spirit in the officers and Saul. So at that time, they could not kill David. That is the protection and sovereignty of God. And we want to always stay under that protection and be obedient to the Lord so he can protect us. Today in the New Testament reading is John 8. And I think this chapter in the Bible is saying what a dichotomy it is when people choose to live for me, because God chooses all of us. But we have to reciprocate and say, "Yes, God, we believe you and we choose to live our lives for you." So this chapter is the dichotomy of the ones who say yes to God and the ones who totally reject him and reject his son. So it's a huge difference what's going to happen in our lives. If we choose God, we're going to be blessed. If we don't, we will be tormented. So let's read this. Jesus is talking to the people, and he says, and he's talking to the ones who believed in him. And he says, "You are truly my disciples if you remain faithful to my teachings, and you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." Isn't that so beautiful? And boy, we all need to be set free, right? Jesus replied, "I tell you the truth. Everyone who sins is a slave of sin. A slave is not a permanent member of the family, but a son is part of the family forever. So, if the Son, capital S-O-U-N, if the Son sets you free, you are truly free." So they, of course, a lot of the people in the crowd were arguing with Jesus and, saying, "Well, we're children of Abraham. Why do we need to accept you? Why do we need to follow your example?" And here's what he said. "Instead, you are trying to kill me because I tell you the truth, which I heard from God. Abraham never did such a thing. No, you are imitating your real father, not your heavenly Father." They replied, "We aren't illegitimate children. God himself is our true Father." And I loved Jesus' answer. Jesus told them, "If God were your Father, you would love me, because I have come to you from God. I am not here on my own, but he sent me. For you are children of your father, the devil, and you love to do the evil things that he does. He was a murderer from the beginning. He has always hated truth, because there is no truth in him. When he lies, it is consistent with his character, for he is a liar, and he's the father of lies. And anyone who belongs to God listens gladly to the words of God. But you don't listen because you don't belong to God. I tell you the truth, anyone who obeys my teachings will never die." Then Jesus answered, I tell you the truth, before Abraham was even born, I am. And remember, that's the capital A. So he says, I am, not just I am with a small a, but that's who I am. I am, meaning I always was, I am today, and I am forever. At that point, they picked up their stones to throw at him, but Jesus was hidden from them and left the temple. Well, Jesus says, if you believe in God, then you believe in me, because God sent me and I came to earth. And I loved what he says about you are a slave to sin, because if we are not living our lives for God, we are saved by grace, which means unmerited favor. But when we accept Jesus, then he gives us the strength to not go back into those same sins. And that's, for example, being a slave to sin can be alcoholism, a drug addiction. The more you take, the more you want, and then we become a slave. The drugs and alcohol overtakes our lives, where we have no control over it anymore. Where Jesus, he wants to be in control of our lives. So if you ever struggle with anything like this, it says in the Bible, cast your cares upon him, for he cares for us. So give it to the Lord, seek him, get on your faces. Let's learn the word that will build us up and make us stronger. And then God will send other people to help you as well. The psalm today is Psalm 112. And I usually like to pick some of my very favorite parts out of it. But today it's 12 verses, and I couldn't choose because it was all so magnificent. I just couldn't take anything out. So if you would give me the luxury of just reading these words with you, or let's read them together, because they're just so magnificent. All of God's word is magnificent, but this particular psalm just, sometimes it just grasps you and just steals your heart. How joyful are those who fear the Lord and delight in obeying his commands. Their children will be successful everywhere. An entire generation of godly people will be blessed. So see, when we choose to live for God, all of our generations behind us, they will be blessed as well, and they will live blessed lives. They themselves will be wealthy, and their good deeds will last forever. Light shines in the darkness of the godly. They are generous. That's what my dad taught me. My parents were so generous with everybody around them. They knew that God blessed them to be a blessing. And I had the privilege of growing up watching that my entire life. Good comes to those who lend money generously and conduct their business fairly. Such people will not be overcome by evil. Those who are righteous will be long remembered. They do not fear bad news. They confidently trust the Lord to care for them. They are confident and fearless and can face their foes triumphantly. They share freely and give generously to those in need. Their good deeds will be remembered forever. They will have influence and honor. The wicked will see this and be infuriated, because the wicked hates seeing the godly blessed. They hate it. They will grind their teeth in anger. They will slink away, their hopes thwarted. Oh well, because the bottom line is when we live for God, we're going to be blessed. And if they want to be thwarted, right? We are going to live for Jesus. And then the Proverbs today is Proverbs 15, 12 through 14. Mockers hate to be corrected. They stay away from the wise. A glad heart makes a happy face. A broken heart crushes the spirit. A wise person is hungry for knowledge, while the fool feeds on trash.